Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00, and I recently released a video called Halo Infinite is Halo CE, with the subtitle Endless Disappointment. And in it I highlighted the fact that Halo Infinite's campaign really didn't do a lot. There was really no new lore that emerged as a consequence, and this has caused a stagnation in regards to how the franchise is continuing to develop. On top of that, add in the fact that all of the campaign staff at 343 Industries have been let go. There's really very minimal hope that anything's really going to happen with Halo Infinite to revive what is otherwise a rapidly dying game. Even the recent Xbox showcases had nothing, and I mean nothing, even mentioned regarding Halo Infinite or any other Halo project. I also highlighted that as a content creator, my channel thrives on new emergent lore, and Halo Infinite really gave us nothing aside from the endless. And while you would expect as an entirely new faction there would be huge wealths of lore to explore and to understand about this new faction, we know basically nothing. Nothing about them whatsoever. And again, in that video I did reference that I was going to explore narratively what could have been for Halo Infinite, and that's the subject of this video. It's just a little delayed because, well, to be honest, I got a little distracted revealing just a little side project, nothing major that I've been sort of undertaking on the side. Yeah, I've got so much more to show you guys about that. Anyway, moving on. So today in this video we're tackling what could have been for Halo Infinite, running on what is seemingly the evidence supporting that Halo Infinite was to be a soft reboot for the franchise and is heavily inspired by Halo CE, and was supposed to span 10 years worth of content. I have no idea how the hell they're going to do that now. So if you want to be inspired and disappointed in equal measure at what could have been but ultimately never was, stick with me while we explore what could have been for Halo Infinite. So first things first, let's start at what we know, and that's the Halo Infinite campaign that we actually received. During this campaign, the Master Chief finds himself on an unknown Halo installation, and really his primary goal for the entirety of the campaign is to rally the disparate groups of Marines across its surface and take back control of this region of the installation. This bears a striking resemblance to one and only one level of Halo CE, and that is the level titled Halo. Now admittedly, yes, Halo Infinite extrapolates a little bit more narratively speaking. We have targets with their own target dossiers and backstories available to kill across the surface of the open world aspect of Zeta Halo. We have boss battles, we have other objective-based missions that help advance the story that take the form of different fauna facilities underneath the surface of the open world of the ring. But really, when you take the overarching objectives of the campaign as a whole, you come to the conclusion that the primary objective is to retake control of this region of the ring, find the disparate Marines, and bring them together so that you can mount an effective resistance, which bears a very close resemblance to this.
If we can find Captain Keyes and the other survivors, we have a chance to coordinate an effective resistance.
In truth, even aesthetically speaking, there is only one biome in Halo Infinite, and that is deciduous and coniferous forest. That's it. And what does that bear a resemblance to? The second level of Halo CE, where it is just deciduous and coniferous forests. And again, this is in line with what they made abundantly clear was the plan for Halo Infinite, which was for Halo Infinite to be a soft reboot and heavily inspired by Halo CE. Indeed, even when you move around on the open world aspect of Zeta Halo, you find downed Bumblebee escape craft in just the same way as you find them in Halo CE. Even the beacons in Halo CE that fire skyward and beckon you to other environments and locations further afield than you can see exist in Halo Infinite for practically the same purpose. So when all of this is taken into account, we establish quite clearly that the entirety of the Halo Infinite campaign that we have, the one that we've received, is based almost exclusively on the second level of Halo CE. It has the same overarching narrative, the same objectives, the same primary missions, the same environment, the same overall feel, and establishes the same amount of narrative progress in the story. But the level Halo in Halo CE is only one of 10 levels that are available to play that offer different environments, different objectives, and advance the narrative. The number 10 should be ringing alarm bells because Halo Infinite was said to be the next 10 years of the Halo franchise, and there was intention, at least in the onset, for there to be new campaign DLC year on year. Obviously, that hasn't happened. But if it did, how would it have happened? Or indeed, in my own personal opinion, how should it have happened? Well, since Halo Infinite campaign was originally intended to be launched every year, over a 10-year period, and there are 10 levels for Halo CE, one can only assume that it would have been effectively a level a year, just extrapolated out into a multi-hour campaign DLC. So, we're going to deal with this going forward in a year-by-year basis. So, straight off the bat, straight away, in December of 2021, Halo Infinite, as we got it, released. The following year in 2022, we should have received the first campaign DLC, which I believe should have covered the events of what was originally the Pillar of Autumn, but will then ultimately be the events of the Fall of the Infinity that we only saw in cutscene at the very start of Halo Infinite's campaign, that should then be explored and expanded narratively. So going forward from here, every year, new campaign DLC, new level to be covered. Well, first things first, the level Halo in Halo CE is actually the second level of the game. The first level is the Pillar of Autumn. Now, during the level the Pillar of Autumn, we establish a few key things about the overarching narrative, and we have Master Chief needing to extract from the Pillar of Autumn because the Pillar of Autumn falls under attack. Now, we saw basically the very end of this narrative represented in Halo Infinite in the opening cutscene of the game, when we see the Infinity being attacked by the banished dreadnoughts, and Chief fighting off forces and then eventually encountering Atriox, basically having his arse handed to him, and then being thrown out of the ship. That was, by definition, the level the Pillar of Autumn. So after the first year of the campaign that we got, we should have then received a campaign DLC of the Pillar of Autumn, or rather, the Infinity. This campaign DLC should have taken place between Chief and Blue Team being picked up on Reach at the close of the book Shadows of Reach, and the cutscene that we ultimately saw at the very start of the Halo Infinite campaign. Frustratingly, much of the interesting narrative that took place during these events were covered both in the audio logs within Halo Infinite's campaign itself and parts from the book Rubicon Protocol. In either case, this particular DLC could have covered the events of the weapon being deployed on Zeta Halo. Now, the weapon's deployment is actually a little bit hazy. The information here is rather flaky at best. There are seemingly at least two explanations as to how the weapon actually got from the Infinity to Zeta Halo, and supporting evidence for both sides is vague enough to suggest that there's still a margin for error for either one of them to be possible. As covered in the sequence cutscene,
Halsey initialized you. I was supposed to deploy you.
And you did, right?
Yes.
So what happened?
Atriox came for you. He attacked the Infinity. We fought. He won.
This seemingly suggests that the Infinity arrived at Zeta Halo, Chief took the chip and actually deployed the weapon on Zeta Halo, and then returned to the Infinity when it was attacked by the Banished, with Atriox seemingly knowing that the weapon existed, likely by connecting the dots of the reason why Blue Team were on Reach retrieving the cloned brains of Dr. Halsey, and knowing full well that the weapon was one of the only viable ways to contain and kill Cortana as revenge for her destroying his home planet of Doisak. Atriox came for the weapon, but the weapon had already been deployed at this point. She was already on Zeta Halo, so Atriox just resigned to beat the living snot out of Chief. And once Infinity fell, he went down onto the surface of Zeta Halo and found Cortana, which is why Cortana was expecting Chief to turn up and was surprised when it was Atriox. Yet the other series of events suggests that the second that Infinity emerged from slipspace above Zeta Halo, she was attacked by the Banished, which meant that the Banished were already there, which then wouldn't have actually allowed Chief the period of time necessary to go from the Infinity down to the surface of Zeta Halo and then back again before Infinity fell. So these two particular possibilities on exactly what happened here remain vague. But it would be nice to have some clarity in this in some DLC, which could have been covered in the 2022 release of the Infinity DLC. What we know for certain is that while Infinity was being attacked, Master Chief and Fireteam Ares escorted Lasky to a lifeboat, with Chief then moving aft to a shuttle bay to assist Marine forces in clearing Banished forces to allow Pelicans to evacuate. This is when Chief finally encounters Atriox. But indeed the entire process of arriving at Zeta Halo, deploying the weapon, being attacked by the Banished, and extracting from the ship, eventually culminating in the fight with Atriox, could all have been narratively explored with a multi-mission DLC launched in 2022 titled The Infinity. And now with that somewhat prequel mission out of the way, we can move forward with the narrative, and the next level that has to be explored narratively is the Truth and Reconciliation. Or in Halo Infinite's case, launched in 2023, Ghost of Baralon. The Ghost of Baralon is a Banished dreadnought attending Zeta Halo, and it's actually responsible for the shock rifle, so there would also be possibility with having new shock-based weaponry available during this campaign DLC. I see this particular campaign DLC starting at Camp Tremonius, with Marines reporting that there's an inbound signature. In the distance, a Banshee comes into view and descends to the surface of Camp Tremonius, hovering briefly and then shutting down. From the back of the Banshee, Sarah Palmer disembarks, takes a few steps towards the Chief, and then collapses. Marines try to catch her, but she's too heavy in her armour. The Marines struggle, but Chief quickly steps in and scoops her up, helping her walk to a crate to sit down. Chief can very simply, in his stoic way, say, "I got you." Marines can hand her some water as she takes off her helmet, and then Chief, once she'd taken a drink, can ask, "What's your status?" Palmer would then say that she'd just come from a Banished dreadnought a few hundred kilometres upspin. They have Lasky and the rest of the Infinity's command crew. The Marines nearby then interrupt and say it's been 6 months since Infinity fell, and had she been on that ship all this time? Palmer would then go on to explain that she escorted remaining personnel to Bay 10 within the Infinity while it was being attacked, where they ultimately extracted on a Pelican. Upon getting clear, she attempted to identify Lasky's location. She moved through to the cockpit to get a better view, and it is at this moment that the Pelican comes under attack, almost immediately upon launching from the Infinity's hangar bay. The cockpit is shot upon, breaching the windshield, causing explosive decompression. The co-pilot and pilot are both killed by the plasma fire, and then the sudden explosive decompression thereafter. Luckily, Palmer is wearing her Mjolnir armour, which saves her from this fate and ultimately forces her to take the pilot seat. She expertly dives the Pelican and diverts under Infinity's belly, where she then levels out on the other side to see Lasky's Pelican taking fire. She engaged and fought them off, but Lasky's Pelican was in a bad way, so she escorted the Pelican to a hard landing ringside and quickly secured the area, moving to Lasky to confirm his status. He had minor injuries, but was okay. Shortly after this, they could hear sonic booms above their head, and when they looked, they watched Infinity re-enter the atmosphere and fall, passing through the atmosphere and impacting further upspin. The impact shockwaves could be felt even this far away. They spent the next few days attempting to avoid Banished forces and trying to raise additional forces at both Infinity's wreckage and across the ring, but every time they broadcast it attracted Banished attention, and they didn't get any friendly responses. Then, the destruction took place that shattered the ring and sent it through slipspace, and for a few hours, the ring was in darkness until it emerged out of slipspace in an unknown location. The amount of banished forces appeared to be less, so they tried their luck in reaching friendlies once again, with the skies being clear of the characteristic banished dreadnoughts. Unfortunately, in attempting to raise friendly units nearby, a banished dreadnought emerges from behind a mountain and floats over their position ominously, only a few kilometers above them. The banished dreadnought quickly descended on their position, with banished forces arriving in phantoms, and after an extended cat and mouse chase, they exhausted their ammo and were ultimately captured by the banished. They were brought aboard the dreadnought Ghost of Baralon and kept imprisoned in makeshift cages. Palmer was placed inside an energy harness to keep her restrained, as at this point the banished weren't entirely clear on how to remove Spartan armour, and all the while the command crew and Lasky were being interrogated for key command information so that they could ultimately harvest the Infinity's wreckage of technology and useful assets. Lasky was valuable, but they executed the rest of the command crew one by one to force him to talk. He gave just enough to attempt to save as many lives as he could, while also remaining useful enough not to be killed himself. They spent months on board, overhearing about an outpost of human resistance, what would eventually become Camp Tremonius. While distracted with these reports, Lasky managed to slip out from his improvised cell, subvert the brutes, and deactivate Palmer's restraints, and they both moved to extract and go find these forces. They slipped through the ship but were eventually found and had to fight their way quickly to one of the shuttle bays. Upon arriving there, Lasky was unfortunately recaptured, and he ordered Palmer to get off the ship and look for the survivors. And after brief hesitation and arguing, she accepted the odds were long, commandeered a Phantom, and flew to the surface. She got coordinates downloaded of the human resistance camp from the Phantom systems, then noticed she was followed, so she crashed the Phantom to look like she had lost control, but had actually bailed out beforehand. She lay low and slowly made her way towards the camp on foot. Knowing she was low on energy, injured and thirsty, and with a large void in the ring to bridge the gap of, she managed to infiltrate a banished FOB, acquired a Banshee, and flew the remaining distance to Camp Tremonius. If Lasky was still alive, there was a chance they could get him back and use his command authorization to access the Infinity and get Roland and other provisions from the ship back online and establish a stronger resistance and presence on the ring. Chief asks to be shown where. They get aboard Echo 216 and take off towards the known location of this dreadnought. By the time they get there, it's dusk, and Echo 216 drops Chief, Palmer, and a squad of Marines off near the dreadnought. The ship is holding position above a desert plateau, very similar to the Truth and Reconciliation and its location in Halo CE. Between their LZ and the ship, unfortunately, is a huge, banished staging area. Hundreds of drop bases nested between a large fauna structure jutting out from the plateau. The advance to the dreadnought is part Truth and Reconciliation and part Tip of the Spear from Halo Reach. The squad move in on a spire similar to the one found in Reach, which is used for communications. The weapon hacks it and fills it with noise to prevent ground forces telegraphing their presence to the ship above, thereby mitigating the risks that the ship would find out about their presence and then just accelerate away. At this point it's now full nighttime, and a proper dark nighttime, not the kind of lighter nighttime we did get in the Halo Infinite campaign, and they continue to advance on the dreadnought's position. There could even be an achievement available for actually getting all the way to the ship without alerting any enemies on the ground. Along the way, you release small squads of captured ODSTs, and once below the ship you get aboard a deployed drop base. The weapon then fakes a repair request signal to the ship above. They're granted access, and all friendly forces get aboard the drop base, beginning the repair run with the thrusters coming online and sending the drop base back up to the dreadnought. Once inside the dreadnought, they engage banished forces and make their way through the ship to Lasky's position. They find him injured, but okay. He's evidently been beaten by the banished forces. It's at this point that the weapon identifies that the comm block that she'd put in place had been undone. She then makes brief contact with another AI, but this AI is not human. This one is a banished AI. Their presence is then telegraphed to all forces in the area. They recover Lasky and head back to the shuttle bay, where they find 4 undamaged Pelicans, all the while fighting through reinforcements that are coming back up to the ship from the ground below, and the crew within the ship itself. Chief quickly commandeers one Pelican, Palmer and Lasky on the other, and then the weapon creates split shards of herself to control the other 2. The remaining survivors, if there are any, load up into the Pelicans and they extract from the dreadnought before being overrun. They return to Camp Tremonius, where Lasky gives Chief the order to go and find the ring's cartographer, while he takes a contingent of Marines to secure the wreckage of the Infinity. And that is the campaign DLC of 2023 and the recreation of the Truth and Reconciliation done and dusted. Next we move on to a recreation of the Silent Cartographer to be released in 2024, which instead would be called The Monument. Now again, we're dealing with campaign DLC here, so we can't just extrapolate one level that's only going to be the equivalent of between 30 minutes and an hour of gameplay. We need to make something that's decidedly bigger, that's worth being a campaign DLC, and narratively adds a decent sized campaign to Halo Infinite every single year. So the Silent Cartographer level is actually remarkably quick. In fact, if you speedrun certain aspects of the Silent Cartographer, you can do it in a few minutes. And that's just not going to cut it. So I envisage the Silent Cartographer level for Halo Infinite, or more accurately the Monument, to be something closer to the Ark in Halo 3 in scale, with heavy use of vehicles but also some fantastic tidbits of lore and features through the dark depths of Zeta Halo. So it would start off with a flight of Pelicans leaving Camp Tremonius. 5 Pelicans, with 2 breaking off, one carrying Lasky and the other carrying Palmer, both filled up with additional Marines to head for Infinity's crash site. The other 3 head to the Cartographer. The weapon leads them to a desert. Pelicans can't advance any closer without getting hit by half a dozen anti-aircraft guns, so they drop them off well back from the AA guns. Chief and a group of ODSTs advance on an area, moving through an underground facility to locate the security overwrite, very similar to the Silent Cartographer from Halo CE, but with some notable differences. Eventually, they ultimately succeed and move through to the other side, where the level very much takes on an Ark kind of feel, where they come across the first large group of banished forces, aside from the small smattering of banished forces they've encountered along the way, and have to take down an anti-aircraft turret. This would have some passing similarities to the level Sword Base from Halo Reach, and after eventually taking down the first anti-aircraft turret, Captain Lasky finally gets in touch to inform them that they've arrived at the Infinity's wreckage and that he's already found some heavy armour that he's sending his way to support. Chief and the Allied forces then identify a nearby area for an LZ, but at least one more anti-aircraft gun needs to be disabled in order for that LZ to be clear. They continue to move and take down the second AA gun, enabling a fast and low approach to the now clear LZ. Pelicans with an attachment of Condors drop off Scorpions, Warthogs and Wolverines, and then extract once more as there are still AA guns in the area. Chief mounts up inside a Scorpion tank, or whatever vehicle you choose in this particular scenario, and move forward to take out the remaining AA guns. They're ultimately reinforced with a drop-off of Marines as they mount up and move through a massive wall-like structure, and out the other side, where they are confronted by an immense fauna structure rising from the desert sands, with a dozen gondola-like transports docked at the far end. Between them and the gondolas, however, is a massive staged battle area between the Banished and UNSC forces. Wraiths, blisterbacks, ghosts, banshees, and huge swathes of infantry begin their opening volley as the UNSC surge forward. As the UNSC appear to be making progress, a banished scarab emerges from beneath the sands, hearkening to its namesake, emerging like a giant robotic scarab beetle. The UNSC, led by the Chief, take on the forces and manage to clear them out, culminating in Chief going God mode and taking on the scarab single-handedly, narrowly avoiding taking a direct scarab beam hit, and then marginally avoiding being trodden on, eventually climbing its leg and destroying it from the inside. Once they're done and the other AA turrets are taken down, they mop up the stragglers and then climb the Forerunner structure, moving through internal corridors and rooms until they find their way to the gondolas. Upon activating one gondola, it pulls away from the structure and accelerates across the desert landscape before diving through a 30-kilometer diameter hole in the ring's landscape. They find themselves diving through the labyrinthine interior of Zeta Halo. But far from being devoid of activity, this is full of activity as sentinels and constructors move back and forth across massive chasms, the energy of the ring pulsing through massive conduits and into towering spires that rise to feed energy from below to the structures and devices on the ring's surface. Even massive strato-sentinels rise and move about, performing their tasks and paying only minimal attention to the gondola as it passes. A huge, circular aperture-like door looms ahead which rotates, unlocks, and withdraws, allowing access to an immense void in the bowels of the ring. The gondola descends through the darkness, and below a dock looms from the dark. A sub-monitor then sweeps past the gondola and comes to a stop at the dock below, highlighting more of its surroundings with its gentle, blue glow. The gondola slows until they settle in the dock, on the floor of an enormous chamber. The sub-monitor introduces itself as 091 Adjutant Veridity. She highlights her previous assistance to Spartan Coven and her desire to rid the ring of the Banished. After a brief exchange to ascertain loyalties, Veridity leads the way through the darkness. The floor glistens with a web-like maze of green, glowing hard light. Huge crystals tower above Chief and the others as they move through the deep, ultraviolet lit avenues between building-sized crystals. Getting close to the crystals shows they contain energy and code only dimly lit, barely active in places, and in a similar manner to the ghost-like apparitions Chief saw during Foundations, the visages of people and memories boil within, coming into focus and then dissolving once more. The others pass comment on the eeriness of this place, and Veridity begins to explain that the massive crystals are actually the original core processing crystals of Mendicant Bias, but that he had been removed many eons before, and the crystals had since been reappropriated to a storage medium for thousands of composed essences of beings who were once inhabiting the ring, under the librarian's direct instructions. This harkens back to the book Point of Light by Kelly Gay. Movement can be heard in the darkness nearby, and the group react to it accordingly. A set of eyes blink at them in the darkness. Chief activates his helmet lights at a creature that emerges from the gloom. A Tuliok, an insect-like species who live amongst the crystals. Suddenly, dozens, if not hundreds of them, can be seen crawling along the surfaces of the crystals. Veridity urges them to stay their weapons, as they mean no immediate harm and only attack if threatened. The group somewhat relax and continue through the city-like crystals until they find their way to a terminal. On the way, Veridity explains that since the damage that was caused to the ring, the cartographer's normal location that had been jutting out from one of the immense retaining walls of the ring was destroyed, so the cartographer systems were moved to a different location on the opposite side of the ring, but that this place served as a silent cartographer. Chief approaches the terminal and activates it. Veridity and the weapon interact as they identify the location of the control room of Halo. With this information, the humans return to the gondola where they find banished forces are disembarking others. A fight breaks out, in which all but Chief are killed. This attack prompts the Tuliok to attack the banished and the Chief. Veridity opens a portal and translocates Chief to another chamber, with the banished forces likely being overrun and killed by the Tuliok. Veridity beckons Chief to an elevator that he boards and begins to rise, revealing he's within a 531 meter diameter chamber with a 104 meter wide arena in the center, floating above which is a dimly lit, massive cage of intermeshed black rods, and within, large piles of dust and barely recognizable remains lay dormant. The primordial, the first gravemind and progenitor of the flood. Veridity grimly answers the unasked question. The first? Chief asks. Yes, it was entrapped here within this time lock by the Isodidact, who subjected it to billions of years of entropy in moments. While the flood are extraordinarily virulent and capable of surviving in all but the most extreme of environments, it would seem even they are not immune to the passage of time. The elevator continues to rise until it comes to a stop in a large room. Veridity wishes the Spartan good luck and returns to her station. Chief continues on through the customary labyrinthine corridors of Zeta Halo's interior spaces until he finds an armiger carapace collapsed on the floor, evidence of battle around it. He examines it while the weapon runs diagnostic. After confirming it went offline months before, likely from banished attacks, she IDs a device within its shell. Chief prizes it free and fits it to his forearm mount. The weapon runs a patch and confirms it's a translocation device. Chief tests it out, setting a return point and then moving away, triggering it and returning to that point. Satisfied, he continues through the corridors and chambers until he finds himself on a walkway with a door at the far end. The door opens before he gets to it, and out of the door strides Atriox. Chief stands ready to attack. Master Chief, I respect your survival instinct. After I tossed you into the void, I assumed time and the cold, hard vacuum of space would finish you. Evidently, I was mistaken. You were not as weak and undisciplined as your kin, but no matter. The ring has provided me with a means to ensure a new home for the Juralhane, and you and the rest of the UNSC are most definitely not welcome. Chief remains stoic but battle-ready, not taking his eyes off the brute for a moment. She was expecting you, you know. Cortana. When I confronted her in the silent auditorium, she was expecting you. You were her protector, yes? And in the end, the only one she was willing to allow to take her down. Her sacrifice delayed my plans and left me with a mark to remember her by, as he gestures to his facial scar. But her death was not upon my shoulders. Her death is because of you. You were not there to protect her, to reclaim her, to take her home. Her death, her sacrifice, was not because I won. It was because you failed. Chief fires at Atriox, who blocks the shots and closes on Chief in moments. A boss battle would begin here, where Chief fights desperately to take Atriox down, but Atriox just shrugs off the attacks like they're nothing. The weapon steps in and suggests that they fall back, to live to fight another day. Chief refuses, activating the translocator and fighting Atriox, attempting to use it to blindside him. Atriox unfortunately preempts this and strikes the Chief with his energy mace, knocking him backward and off of his feet. Chief quickly recovers, and the battle continues with the weapon periodically speaking up to try to convince Chief to disengage. Chief briefly seeks cover, checks his weapon and finds he's nearly out of ammunition. Finally, Chief sees the sense and tells the weapon to find them an exit. Atriox closes on Chief's cover, and Chief emerges and engages in hand-to-hand combat. Atriox once again swipes him away, creating the distance needed for the weapon to activate a brief energy barrier between them. She gives him a waypoint for an elevator, and Chief falls back. Aatrox breaks the energy barrier and pursues. Chief enters the elevator room, climbs aboard it, and activates it. The weapon confirming she'll shut it down when they reach the top. As it begins to rise, Aatrox enters and taunts the Chief once more. The ring has revealed its secrets to me, and with it bestowed upon me the power to release a foe more ancient than the Foreigners themselves. The Endless will return by my hand, and you and your kind will finally be laid to rest. The lift rises to the surface, and Sun pours onto the Chief. Echo 216 makes contact and arranges to pick him up. As the Pelican comes into view and Chief gets aboard, the camera drops back below the surface to Aatrox, and we see the legendary cutscene once more.
This is already, as is the auditorium. Grand Edict, this is most unprecedented.
The Endless must be contained. I will inform the Criterion to proceed.
They believe we are here to help.
It matters not. Today we do what it takes to maintain order, to preserve our truth. Time will forget they ever existed.
Time is not a construct we can control.
And we cannot allow it to be theirs. If Halo cannot end them, it must imprison them. When it is done, the engineers will be busy. We will learn their secrets.
I fear I cannot do this alone.
You shall not be alone. The Criterion has given the order. Offensive bias has been deployed.
And so closes campaign DLC number 3 and part 1 of this video. We're already pushing 36 minutes worth of content here, and there's a lot left to do. So if you want to hear the conclusion to what I think should have happened for Halo Infinite's campaign, make sure that you like and subscribe so you don't miss when part 2 is released, where we will cover Halo Infinite's reimagining of Assault on the Control Room, 343 Guilty Spark, the Library, 2 Betrayals, Keys, and the more. Trust me, you do not want to miss this. So remember to like and subscribe, and until next time. Thanks for watching. If I could respectfully ask, if you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you're told the second a new video hits the shelves. Hit this video with a like if you enjoyed, and if not, it's not a problem. And be sure to pop a comment below to throw me an idea on what you want to see next. Massive thanks to my awesome patrons, Spartan10148, the Metarch of my facility, Falcon, Prophet, Leon, Sylphia, Mikhail, and Irrefutable, the monitors of the array, Darian, Flaming Halo, Cameron, Spartan0137, the Cave Potato, Andrew, Shia, Dakota, and Ghost, my diligent sub-monitors, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, and my loyal enforcers, and all other patrons who have supported the channel and helped keep the domain operational. Huge props and recognition to Todd Morrison, Spartan137, Wesley Stuckey, and Jacob Kemp for jumping on as Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members. You guys are epic. Shout out to John for reasons. And if you want to help support the channel and score yourself tons of perks and merch, head over to Patreon or consider becoming a YouTube member. Links, as ever, are in the description. Much love, take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.